It is not the strongest or the most intelligent who will survive, but those who can best manage change. A man who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life. Only the fittest will survive. I am dying by inches from not having anybody to talk to about insects. It's not the strongest, but the most adaptable that survive. The most important factor in survival is neither intelligence nor strength, but adaptability. The love for all living creatures is the most noble attribute of man. Sympathy beyond the confines of man, that is, humanity to the lower animals, seems to be one of the latest moral acquisitions. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. Some call it evolution, and others call it God. The world will not be inherited by the strongest, it will be inherited by those most able to change. Besides love and sympathy, animals exhibit other qualities connected with the social instincts which in us would be called moral. Even people who aren't geniuses can outthink the rest of mankind if they develop certain thinking habits. If I had my life to live over again, I would have made a rule to read some poetry and listen to some music at least once every week. I am not apt to follow blindly the lead of other men. I have long discovered that geologists never read each other's works, and that the only object in writing a book is a proof of earnestness. Intelligence is based on how efficient a species became at doing the things they need to survive. Mathematics seems to endow one with something like a new sense. Endless forms most beautiful and most wonderful have been, and are being evolved. There is no fundamental difference between man and animals in their ability to feel pleasure and pain, happiness and misery. A mathematician is a blind man in a dark room looking for a black cat which isn't there. The more one thinks, the more one feels the hopeless immensity of man's ignorance. The willing horse is always overworked. Blushing is the most peculiar and most human of all expressions. If everyone were cast in the same mold, there would be no such thing as beauty. The highest possible stage in moral culture is when we recognize that we ought to control our thoughts. Music was known and understood before words were spoken. There is a grandeur in this view of life. From so simple a beginning, endless forms most beautiful are being evolved. Great is the power of steady misrepresentation, but the history of science shows that fortunately this power does not long endure. A man's friendships are one of the best measures of his worth. Progress has been much more general than retrogression. Building a better mousetrap merely results in smarter mice. Freedom of thought is best promoted by the gradual illumination of men's minds which follows from the advance of science. Man, wonderful man, must collapse into nature's cauldron. He is no deity, he is no exception. I have called this principle, by which each slight variation, if useful, is preserved, by the term of natural selection. I have tried lately to read Shakespeare, and found it so intolerably dull that it nauseated me. Free will is to mind what chance is to matter. At no time am I a quick thinker or writer. Whatever I have done in science has solely been by long pondering, patience, and industry. I always make special notes about evidence that contradicts me, supportive evidence I can remember without trying. Worms have played a more important part in the history of the world than humans would at first suppose. The very essence of instinct is that it's followed independently of reason. Every new body of discovery is mathematical in form, because there is no other guidance we can have. Nature will tell you a direct lie if she can. If the misery of the poor be caused not by the laws of nature, but by our institutions, great is our sin. Nothing exists for itself alone, but only in relation to other forms of life. The school as a means of education to me was simply a blank. Much love, much trial, but what an utter desert is life without love. Multiply, vary, let the strongest live and the weakest die. Everything in nature is the result of fixed laws. The normal food of man is vegetable. I am turned into a sort of machine for observing facts and grinding out conclusions. To suppose that the eye could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest possible degree. Wherever the European had trod, death seemed to pursue the aboriginal. Sympathy for the lowest animals is one of the noblest virtues with which man is endowed. Sympathy will have been increased through natural selection. Man tends to increase at a greater rate than his means of subsistence. The age-old and noble thought of, I will lay down my life to save another, is nothing more than cowardice. Many kinds of monkeys have a strong taste for tea, coffee, and spirituous liqueurs. The mystery of the beginning of all things is insoluble by us, and I for one must be content to remain an agnostic. I feel like an old warhorse at the sound of a trumpet when I read about the capturing of rare beetles. In my simplicity, I remember wondering why every gentleman did not become an ornithologist. The most energetic workers I have encountered in my world travels are the vegetarian miners of Chile. I see no good reasons why the views given in this volume should shock the religious views of anyone. It is mere rubbish thinking, at present, of origin of life. One might as well think of origin of matter. An American monkey, after getting drunk on brandy, would never touch it again, and thus is much wiser than most men. We are not here concerned with hopes or fears, only with truth as far as our reason permits us to discover it. An agnostic would be the more correct description of my state of mind. My mind seems to have become a kind of machine for grinding general laws out of large collections of facts. We will now discuss in a little more detail the struggle for existence. It is a fatal fault to reason whilst observing, though so necessary beforehand and so useful afterwards. Animals manifestly enjoy excitement and suffer from a null and may exhibit curiosity. I am not the least afraid to die. One hand has surely worked throughout the universe. He who understands baboons would do more towards metaphysics than Locke. With mammals, the male appears to win the female much more through the law of battle than through the display of his charms. A scientific man ought to have no wishes, no affections, a mere heart of stone. A republic cannot succeed till it contains a certain body of men imbued with the principles of justice and honor. I have no great quickness of apprehension or wit which is so remarkable in some clever men, for instance Huxley. On your life, underestimating the proclivities of finches is likely to lead to great internal hemorrhaging. Hence, a traveler should be a botanist, for in all views plants form the chief embellishment. To kill an error is as good a service as, and sometimes even better than, the establishing of a new truth or fact. Our faculties are more fitted to recognize the wonderful structure of a beetle than a universe. Linnaeus and Cuvier have been my two gods, though in very different ways, but they were mere schoolboys to old Aristotle. On the ordinary view of each species having been independently created, we gain no scientific explanation. I agree with the Agassiz that dogs possess something very like conscience. I hate a barnacle as no man ever did before, not even a sailor in a slow-sailing ship. Delight itself, however, is a weak term to express the feelings of a naturalist. I long to set foot where no man has trod before. We have happy days, remember good dinners. Attention, if sudden and close, graduates into surprise, and this into astonishment, and this into stupefied amazement. As the sense of smell is so intimately connected with that of taste, it is not surprising that an excessively bad odor should excite retching or vomiting in some persons. It struck me that favorable variations would tend to be preserved and unfavorable ones tend to be destroyed. The moral faculties are generally and justly esteemed as of higher value than the intellectual powers. Life is nearly over with me. I have taken no pains about my style of writing. It is impossible to conceive of this immense and wonderful universe as the result of blind chance or necessity. I can remember the very spot in the road, whilst in my carriage, when to my joy the solution occurred to me. I worked on true Baconian principles and without any theory collected facts. The survival or preservation of certain favored words in the struggle for existence is natural selection. Man selects only for his own good, nature only for that of the being which she tends. It is like confessing to a murder. If I had not been so great an invalid, I should not have done so much as I have accomplished. Animals, whom we have made our slaves, we do not like to consider our equal. Often a cold shudder has run through me, and I have asked myself whether I may have not devoted myself to a fantasy. We behold the face of nature bright with gladness. It may be doubted whether any character can be named which is distinctive of a race and is constant.